Hey everybody, Ryan Medora here, and welcome back to another lesson. And today we're going to talk a little bit about country style bass playing, which is something that, living in Nashville is a thing that comes on my radar quite a bit. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to play it authentically, a couple of the pitfalls that might kind of trip us up a little bit, and then ways that we can kind of practice this and understand how it works with different chord progressions. So if you want to get tab, notation, anything like that, head over to my Patreon page. You'll be able to find it there for this lesson and basically everything you see at this channel. And in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing, the theory, the chords, all the goodness, and how to create a cool country bass line that sounds and feels very authentic. So for this lesson, we're going to be working in the good old key of C. We're mostly sticking to a 1-4-5 chord progression, meaning we're going to be using the chords C as the 1 chord, F as the 4, and G as our 5. Rarely, if you're just playing through the C major scale, you'll find C as the 1, F as the 4, G as the 5. And I also like to find these notes lower as well, so I'll find my C here, I'll go down to my F on the first fret of my E string, and then can find my lower G here, and come back to the 1. So we're going to be using these 1-4-5 chords, but we're going to kind of follow a chord progression that's, loosely based off of the tune Act Naturally, one of my favorite Ringo songs, but also, classic country. But this is something that really, from a lesson standpoint, can be applicable to a lot of classic country, whether you're listening to a Waylon Jennings tune or George Strait or even some more modern stuff, Dolly Parton, a lot of classic country tunes will use this feel, and we're going to talk about using the root and the fifth. So the interesting thing about playing roots and fifths is that it's kind of this binary thing. We're not necessarily using ones and zeros, we're using ones and fives. But the order in which we play these chord tones is really important because of the function that they provide. Now, when we're playing roots and fifths, it can be easy to kind of get tripped up by not necessarily playing the fifth of this chord that we're on, and then it goes to the root note of this other chord, but wait, we just played that note. So it actually takes a little bit of understanding in terms of how we choose when to play the root and when to play the fifth as we're moving through a chord progression. The other thing to know is that the rules of the dominant to tonic relationship really come into play here. Now, this is kind of this classic theory concept that when you're in a key, usually we will refer to the 1 chord as the tonic, and we'll refer to the 5 chord as the dominant. That's because if we were to build a dominant chord on scale degree 5, it would have this tension that wants to resolve to 1. That's really a nice, G7 to C, or dominant to tonic. And believe it or not, while I'm playing chords, this notion of 5 wanting to resolve to 1 is a really important thing about country style bass playing, where we're going between the root note, the root note here, to the fifth, and that's going to be our dominant, and back to the tonic. The interesting thing is when we play a root note and then we play the fifth, depending upon the chord we're going to next, that fifth may set up the next chord, or it might kind of take away from that setup. So for instance, if we're at our C chord and we're playing root fifth, and then we're going to the G chord, it's a little awkward if we play those 2 notes back to back, right? So we kind of have to be aware of the function of whether we're playing the root and the fifth, and if that's the tonic or the dominant. So while this might seem like a little heady at first, it will start to make sense. It will start to crystallize when we think about the note we play and then the subsequent chord that we go to. So to begin, we're going to just start with playing over our C chord. We're going to go there for a couple of bars and then go to our F. And I'm going to show you different ways to navigate this root fifth motion. So we're here. We can either play 2 bars of root and fifth, or we could play root, fifth, root, lower fifth, or we could play root to the lower fifth both times, or we could play root, fifth, root, root. Now that's an interesting thing. Why would I choose to play root, fifth, root, root? Well, I'm about to go to my F chord, the 4th chord. If we think about this dominant to tonic thing that I mentioned, we realize that, the C chord that I'm playing right now, the root note, if I play it on beat 1, it's going to function as the tonic. But if I play it on beat 3 and I move to the F chord, it's now functioning as the dominant leading to the tonic, which is now our F chord. It's moving the interval of a fourth from a major chord to a major chord, and it's actually like helping us get there in a way that feels a little bit more right. So we're going root, fifth, root, root, then going to our 4 chord, F. It's kind of cool. And we realize that we can also move either higher or lower. Root, fifth, root, root. Take it down to our F, and that's a really nice move as well. So already we have a few options here. We can play roots and higher fifths, and then go to our F chord. We can play roots and lower fifths, and I like to move down to the F chord in that case. Or we can play root, fifth, root, root, go up to the F, or root, fifth, root, root, and go down to the F. So automatically we kind of have, 4 at least very good options to move from our 1 chord to the 4 chord, and it's all based around how we choose to use that root and fifth and the function of those notes. So again, while it may seem kind of simplistic, the tricky thing about playing country music is knowing what is appropriate to do, and then understanding the function of the note you play, how it works with the chord you're on, and then how it functions with the chord that will come next. So now that we get to our F chord, we're going to be there, and we might be there for 2 bars, in which case I can't play root, fifth both times because I'm going back to my C chord. It's just not going to sound cool because I'm going to get to the C before I mean to. Root, fifth, and then come right back. It kind of takes away the implication of movement that we want as we return to the C chord. So in this case, another great move would be to play the root, the fifth, root, root again, and then go to your C chord. Or to play root, fifth, root, and then maybe some kind of scalar line that moves us back to the 1. So in that case, I played root, fifth, root, and then walked up the scale A, B, C to land on our C chord. So again, it's really all about knowing how to place the motion and how to not arrive at the next chord before we intend to be there. It's really about the intention that we set. So as we're moving from our 1 chord to the 4 chord, we'll come back to the 1, and then I'm going to go to my 5 chord. And you can kind of see that as I do that, I'm doing the same thing. The principle is the same, where I'm playing the root, fifth, root, root, and then going to my G chord. And when I'm there, I can kind of play root, fifth, and then root with a little motion back to the C. So there is some rhyme or reason here. It's really all about knowing when to flip the role of that fifth, whether that 5 that you're playing is functioning as the fifth of the chord or the 5 chord that you're going to, and also thinking about if it's going to serve as the dominant or the tonic of the chord you're on or the chord you're going to. So there's a little bit of math involved, but I think you'll be able to do it. And then also knowing that the back half of a bar is a really great place to imply motion by using scales. So working your way from a G back to C, kind of working yourself up, just kind of 5, 6, 7, 1. That's a great move. When you're on your C chord, you're going to your F. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can go 1, 6, 5, 4. There's a lot of things that you can do, and there is something to be said about staying away from a lot of chromaticism. You may notice that in a lot of country music, this classic country, we don't really have a lot of dissonance. We're not necessarily going to use a lot of the chromatic motion that we might use in a jazz or a bluesier bass line. We do want to stick more so to our scale tones instead of kind of throwing in the chromatic stuff, unless that's part of a riff that we're playing, or maybe we're following a lick the guitar player does, or maybe it's part of the arrangement. But in general, with a lot of these country bass lines, we are going to stick a little closer to the diatonic scale side of things as opposed to the really chromatic side of things we may kind of save for some of our jazzier things. But you can see that the general principles of this is, while we're playing roots and fifths, we have a lot of flexibility, a lot of options in terms of the direction that we move in, whether we play root, fifth, or root, root. understanding that each note will carry a function, usually as a dominant or a tonic, and it will imply where we're about to go next. And then that we can use these scalar moves to help us navigate this chord progression, and we want to stay more diatonic and really just to the notes of the scale as opposed to using chromaticism. So if you want to get that really classic, more authentic country approach, those are the words of wisdom that I think are important to hear. And I think that it's something that as you go back and you listen to some of these more classic country records, you're going to recognize this as well as a listener. So I hope you dug this. If you want to get tab notation, anything like that for this lesson, please head over to my Patreon page. You'll be able to find it there. And in the meantime, happy practicing and keep it groovy.